Hello there, little rascals. Today I will be telling you a story about the inventor of the mechanical messiah. It all started with the birth of someone called John Murray Spear in Boston 1804. He was baptized in the Universalist Church. Honestly, I don't have much interesting to tell you about his youth because nothing really exciting happened during that time of his life. So let's skip forward to an adult John. Keep in mind that John's upbringing was very religious, so he was a God-loving man that took the ideals of the Universalist Church seriously. Especially his belief of equality for all people shaped his life. He even became a minister in the Universalist Church in 1830. As a reverend, he spread the gospel of universal love and acceptance. With such a mindset, it is unsurprising that he decided to spend a good portion of his life on activism, where he tried to better the position of others. For example, he was a big advocate for women's rights, helped workers to unionize and organize strikes, and he also was against the death penalty, as he saw it as an inhumane punishment, which most of us can imagine was, for that time period, quite shocking. No. Some conservatives would go absolutely bonkers when they saw people coming up for the slaves. So it is unsurprising that when African Americans were able to break free and flee, that they were being hunted down. But as long as John was around, you could count on him to protect any runaway slave. Because as a prominent abolitionist, John even organized the first Universalist anti-slavery convention. Besides this, John further aided the cause of abolitionism by being a railroad conductor. But not just any railroad. The Underground Railroad. This refers to a network of secret routes and safe houses that enslaved Africans and African Americans used to escape from slavery. Escapees attempted to primarily escape into free states and from there to Canada. So, as you can see, the man was not afraid to be an agent of change. Maybe he did all these things because of his religion. Perhaps he simply got off on either helping people out or by making enemies left and right. Regardless of his motivations, a drastic change happened in the middle of John's life, as he suddenly decided to turn his back to Universalist Church. Instead, he had found an interest in spiritualism, where he became intertwined in the mystical and the afterlife. You see, our activist John had decided to become a medium, so basically someone that is able to communicate with the dead. He claimed that he spoke with a specific group of spirits. Perhaps you know some members, everyday folk like Founding Father Benjamin Franklin, 6th U.S. President John Quincy Adams, Founding Father and ex-U.S. President Thomas Jefferson, and Founding Father Benjamin Rush. According to John, all of these ghosts were members of a club he called the Association of Electricizers. And during his contact with some of these founding fathers, John received a prophecy for greater freedom made possible by technology. So this is where the ball first started rolling for John's focus on mechanical technology. However, another experience made a deep impact on John's spiritual ways. On Christmas Eve, 1844, John attended a lecture against Roman Catholicism in Portland, Massachusetts. John remained silent throughout the whole ordeal. Eventually, at the end of the lecture, a man stood up to ask if a reply would be permitted. The crowd roared at him to be quiet, which caused John to stand up and ask if they were afraid of free discussion. And as any good Catholic would do, they all agreed with John, and peaceful behavior was shown.
Psych!
No, of course not. Instead, the mob grabbed him, forced him to the ground, and beat his head repeatedly. I think the lecture could better be focused on anger management, because that was quite the overreaction. But luckily, a friend of John was able to find his unconscious body and brought him to safety. Everybody thought John would die, as he had a severe concussion and was spasming throughout the night. Soon, he fell into a coma. But after a week, John awoke with a smile on his face. The friend savior was called Oliver Dennis. And isn't it just nice to have a friend that takes care of you when you're almost beaten to death? I believe Oliver deserves a medal for his friendly friendliness. So here you go. Sadly, friends are not excluded from the cold embrace of death, because shortly after Oliver saved John, he died. But fear not. John did not have to mourn the loss of his good friend, because quickly after Oliver's death, John suddenly lost all control of his right hand. It was like his hand had a mind of its own. And when John got a pen and some paper, his hand would suddenly start writing messages from the deceased. And guess who was guiding John's hand? Yes, exactly. No one other than good old Oliver Dennis. On a side note, there is actually a condition known to modern medicine as alien hand syndrome. It occurs when a person's hand seems to have a mind of its own. and cannot be controlled by the owner of the hand. It is often the left hand, and according to the US National Institutes of Health, there are a variety of causes like temporal lobe epilepsy, brain surgery, stroke, infections, tumors, among others. So, I believe we could explain this strange phenomenon by linking it to John being absolutely severely beaten up by an angry mob. He probably got serious brain damage that caused his handwriting. But you know what? Let's not Occam's razor this. After all, that is not what John believed, for he was now fully convinced that he could serve as a medium. John started to receive signals from spirits that were trying to communicate with him, I guess. Remember John's friends from the Association of Electricizers? Well, they basically communicated to him that he should build some kind of machine. Benjamin Franklin, his spirit, gave directions on how to build this new power. It did not take long before our charming John gathered his own posse of loyal followers that shared his mystical beliefs. Eventually, John and a handful of his followers retreated to a wooden shed at the top of High Rock Hill in Lynn, Massachusetts. Why there? Because several followers had a vision that the new motive power machine would be built there, of course. John, now a passionate expert in magnetism and electricity, and his skilled engineers would design a machine modeled after the human body. It would get mechanical versions of a heart, lungs, and other vital systems. Truly a serious challenge to create the so-called new motive power. But what does this actually mean? So basically, once the machine would be set in motion, it would not require any further power. Just imagine a spinning top that you would spin with your hands, and suddenly the spinning top will continue spinning forever. It's comparable with the movie Inception, where Leonardo DiCaprio's character uses a spinning top to determine whether he's in the dream world or not. Except this isn't the dream world, and our spinning top isn't just a spinning top, but instead a mechanical Jesus. So now that I think of it, it isn't really a perfect comparison. But it's the best one that I have right now, so you'll just have to do with it. About now, most of you will be questioning what this mechanical messiah, driven by the new motive power, looks like. For me, personally, I imagine it to be a bit of a Jesus-like figure. Something like this. Wait a minute, this is cheap art made by AI. Another soulless machine. Well, I'm sorry, but I try to take pride in my beautiful childlike drawings. So we'll just take this AI trash and throw it away, just like my dreams and aspirations of becoming a doctor. So let's go back to our mechanical messiah. What I was imagining was some kind of humanoid robot, android, C-3PO looking machine. And to give it the messiah vibe, I would have given it long brown hair and a white gown. However, just as Thanos once said, reality is often disappointing. Because Spear, his machine, looked more like this. And when John showed his holy device to his followers, it kinda just sat there and didn't really do anything. For normal people, this would be quite a deal breaker. But John thought hard and came up with a simple explanation. He argued that the machine was but a vessel, and it only needed to be imbued with life. And John argued that life was not created unless male met female. So some kind of female touch or presence was required. And this female would then transfer the essential life essence that would ignite the mechanical messiah. With the help of some newspaper editors that were eating up John's shenanigans like some starved stray cats, they found what John was looking for, the Mary to his messiah. And her name was Samantha Medler, who, believe it or not, was also a medium. Surprise, surprise. So this is where some weird stuff starts to occur. Samantha was brought into a room with the machine and went into a trance, all whilst being witnessed by John and his followers. Soon she began to experience all the symptoms of labor, as if she was undergoing the full process of childbirth. Luckily, the machine was designed to absorb this maternal influence. As Samantha moved and moaned, the witnesses observed something marvelous. The device, made of metal, chemicals and wood, started to pulsate like a heart. The Messiah had been giving the spark. However, other sources stated that nothing really happened. The machine did not spring to life, so John kind of packed up the thing and left. As I said before, reality can be disappointing. Regardless if it was successful or not, which it wasn't, the news of John's endeavors spread throughout the land. I am sure you can imagine that, to a mainstream religious audience, John's attempts to communicate with the dead were rather unpopular. Who knows? Instead of being divinely inspired by angels, John might have been touched by the devil and had been doing witchcraft and magic. And as any filthy muggle-born crowd would do, they decided to destroy any magical items in the world they can possibly get their hands on. Reports claim that John's machine was destroyed by an angry mob, tearing it to pieces and trampling it beneath their feet. After this little incident, John faded into obscurity, and he never thought to rebuild the machine again. His desire to tap into a higher power that might move the machines of the world was lost. But this is not the end for the machine. Although it was seemingly destroyed, it apparently wasn't, because in 2019, in Greeley, Colorado, a certain Miss Agerman passed away at her home. And while her home, full of hoarded objects, was being cleared, the Mechanical Messiah machine showed up in her attic. You must be wondering, how do we know if this is the real deal? Well, because it is clearly labeled and certainly looks like the God machine of John. It's actually basically the same for me. I am the proud owner of the Eiffel Tower. After all, I once slapped a sticker with my name on it, so then my claim must be true. Surely no sane person would doubt this. So yeah, all sarcasm aside, we can't be 100% certain that this is the machine. But who knows, maybe a future incarnation of John might be able to make the thing actually work. Then there would be no doubt at all. Earlier, I said that John's ambition to work on a machine was gone. However, I do still want to explain the end of his life. Although his machine didn't work and he stopped the project, John always remained deeply interested in spiritualism. He became a soothsayer and claimed that he could see the future by communicating with mystical beings. However, in 1872, a spirit told John to stop with his public endeavors and that he should retire, which he did. And in 1887, our good old John finally died in Philadelphia, which I guess is not a bad thing, since now he was finally reunited with his dead friends and he could finally meet up with his buddies from the Association of Electricizers in the Great Beyond. And this brings us to the end of this video, and I want to end it with a little moment of reflection. Although most of us might laugh about how John became a little silly with all the hocus pocus, I do want to commend the fact that throughout his life, his convictions were very strong and just, and his gigantic amount of confidence is admirable. Besides, he was a man that spent decades of his life to better the lives of others, and he even was willing to put himself on the line for his beliefs, even if it meant that he himself could get hurt. And as some famous British chap once said, it's good to have enemies. That means you have stood up for something sometime in your life. So, perhaps it's not John his spiritualism career, but instead his fighting spirit itself that we should remember him for. Well, that's all for today, young ones. I hope you'll be having a great day. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video and want more of them in the future, then please consider to help my channel grow by leaving a like and subscribe. Thanks, until next time.